Imagine a sweltering summer day in June 1816. The salty tang of the ocean fills your lungs, and the sun beats down mercilessly on the weathered deck of the French frigate Méduse. You can hear the distant laughter of sailors, their energy high, dreams alive with the promise of new beginnings. But beneath the surface, a sense of unease simmers. An unknown fate lurks just beyond the horizon. Tonight, we are looking at a story of ambition and tragedy, a fateful voyage that turned into one of the most harrowing maritime disasters in history. The Medusa set sail with 400 souls on board, a mix of government officials, soldiers, and hopeful colonizers. Their destination, the coast of Senegal, poised to establish a new French territory. With each wave crashing against the hull, the ship promises adventure. Optimism swells on deck as heavy sails billow against the wind. The crew, composed of seasoned mariners and inexperienced soldiers, chatter about the possibilities that lay ahead. They dream of land rights, fortunes, and glory. But as the ship pulls away from the familiar shores of France, the waters ahead hold secrets of despair. This voyage is entwined with the pulse of a nation. France is rebuilding itself from the scars of revolution, striving for power and prestige on the global stage. The Medusa, a vessel that should symbolize progress, instead carries the weight of negligence and mismanagement. Captained by a man out of his depth, the ship's launch is marked not by celebration, but by whispers of doubt. With each passing day, the distant horizon that once sparkled with promise begins to morph. What seemed an endless expanse of blue begins to reveal its darker hues. As storm clouds gather, so do the doubts among the men, who now exchange furtive glances when leaders aren't looking. "We've made our choices," says one, his voice barely above a murmur. "We may yet pay for them." And pay they will. The journey soon spirals into chaos, revealing the fragility of life at sea and the brutal reality of human existence when stripped bare. As hopes crash against the unforgiving waves, the outcome of this voyage hangs in the balance. Join us as we unravel the tragic saga of Marooned, the Raft of the Medusa. Chapter 1. A Fatal Decision, the Grounding of Méduse. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the restless waves. July 2nd, 1816. The sea lurches against the hull of the frigate Méduse, a grand vessel once full of promise. A collective hum of sailors buzzes with anticipation. They dream of their voyage to Senegal, a fragrant land of wealth, opportunity, and new beginnings. But beneath that anticipation lies something more sinister. The whispers of discontent swirl among the crew. Captain Charles de Chaumareys stands at the helm, his eyes scanning the horizon. He feels the weight of his crew's unease, yet he remains resolute. "Steady as she goes," he commands, his voice barely rising, above the crackle of the wind. But the captain is not without fear. His ship is moving too fast, guided by a cacophony of confident assertions from his officers. They insist the navigation is sound. No one questions the charts. No one stops to notice how the scent of salt hangs heavier, mingling with an undercurrent of impending doom. And that small, almost unnoticeable sound, it's the growl of destiny shifting underneath the ship. Hours pass with the sun dipping closer to the horizon. The sailors buckle under the oppressive heat. Their shirts cling to their backs, slick with sweat. They squint into the sun's blinding glare, their bodies tensing with unease. Muffled conversations in the sailor's tongue echo like distant thunder. "We're lost," one mutters. "You can't sail with your eyes closed." Too late. The ship hits a violent shudder, like a stallion kicking after a jarring startle. The crew leaps to action, but all around, chaos erupts. The hull grates against the hidden sandbank, a sickening crunch. Time suspends for a heartbeat. "Sir, we're aground," a young officer shouts, panic unabated in his voice. "Steady! Hold her!" de Chaumareys yells, his facade cracking. The breath of the ocean wraps around them, heavy as the dread settling in their chests. Water seeps through the planks, and alarm bells ring louder than the sea's roar. The ship is sinking. Their fate rests now on the decisions of men, a group not prepared for the waves of desperation that follow. "Fetch the lifeboats!" The order is barked, yet confusion reigns. The crew springs into a whirlwind of movement, but there's little organization. Tension fills the air like an electrical storm. Voices blend together in a cacophony of fear. "Get the provisions," another cries out, urgency dragging every sound. The scent of salt transforms. Freshly burning wood flares up like a candle snuffed too soon, the air thickened by anxiety. On the upper deck, de Chaumareix stares into the icy blue sea, his heart racing. "We can't abandon ship," he insists, clenching his fists against the railing. "We must. There's no time to waste," the first mate counters, desperation clawing at his throat. "Lives are at stake." The weight of that statement hangs between them, palpable. Moments stretch, suffocating, like an unseen enemy wrapping its tendrils around their throats, squeezing tighter. "Prepare to lower the boats," de Chaumareix bellows, the command laced with resignation. As the lifeboats are lowered, the ocean swells with ominous waves, mocking their struggle. Panic reigns. A sailor slips on the wet deck, his cry piercing the tumult, a stark reminder of their fragile humanity against nature's wrath. Tension escalates. Urgency becomes frenzy. The first lifeboat drifts precariously, men scrambling to justify their survival. Each man a desperate silhouette against the engulfing sea. There's little coherence. Chaos reigns on the water. Get in, someone screams, their voice breaking against the overwhelming roar of nature. A man's foot slips between the gaps of the wooden planks, his cry lost to the sea as his body tips overboard. The greed of survival pushes others to lurch forward, but still, there are those who hesitate. "Leave him," de Chaumareix orders, but the words quaver under the weight of his conscience. The few men whose hearts still beat to the pulse of camaraderie look back, regret mixed with terror. A shadow stretches across the waves as the sun sinks lower, painting the sky in hues of sorrow. The salty spray of the ocean dampens their resolve, confusion mapping their faces. But instinct, the primal fear of the unknown, takes hold. And in that moment, the tide between them shifts. The captain's heart is heavy with the burden of command. He watches chaos spiral. He feels the icy grip of reality. A sinking ship, men drowning in uncertainty. "Prepare the second boat," he cries, and eyes widen. Time slows as the second boat teeters on the edge of despair. More bodies, desperate and clamoring, bend towards survival. Fear cuts through them all. What if this goes awry? What if they do not make it back? De Chaumareix feels bile rise in his throat. "We'll shipwreck without provisions," he shouts, uncertainty pouring from him as the last of the crew rush toward the lifeboats. "Leave the supplies," the mate urges. "We need to go." But voices drown beneath the shrilling chaos. Men's faces flicker in panic, eyes glistening with the momentary lapse. They are men, our brothers. "What are we without honor?" a sailor reveals, his voice calm amidst the storm. Yet the pull of survival is strong. The ship groans like a wounded beast. The ocean roars, hungry. One lifeboat is full. The crew aboard lash their hands together. Lurching, they drift into the swelling dark, shadows of men against an abyss, abandoning the very vessel meant to carry them home. The Medusa lurches dangerously, the hull cracking as the tide draws back to reveal its jagged teeth. The crew is fractured. The remaining men cling to each other, choices made bone deep. They listen to the dreadful sound of wood splintering. "Goodbye," a voice calls out weakly, swallowed by the relentless waves, as the last of the lifeboats pulls away, leaving behind a floating monument to human error. The captain watches on, a whirlwind of guilt spiraling within him. "Stop! Come back!" But there are no ears left to hear him. The sea's embrace wraps tighter around his ship, and the relentless tide begins anew. Alone on the beleaguered vessel, he finds himself surrounded by the horror of his decisions. Men he asked to trust him become shadows fading into the distance. and as night begins to fall, the first droplets of rain slap against the deck like angry whispers. The sky darkens to a deep, suffocating black. But what lies beneath the surface beckons. A dismal revelation approaches. What will become of those left behind? De Chaumareix swallows hard, the weight of the world pressing against his chest. Behind him, the cries of the men who remained fade into chilling silence. Did he make the right choice? Did he truly believe he could save them all? An echo of the intended destination, Senegal, with its promises of fortune, now feels like a haunting refrain. And the question lingers as the water rises around him, closing in, spiraling into a darkness he cannot escape. Before we descend further into the dark, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You won't want to face the rest of this journey alone. And before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Knowing you are out there, somewhere in the dark, makes this history feel all the more alive. Chapter 2. The Lifeboats, a race against time. The heavy scent of salt water and panic fills the air. The deck of the Medusa slopes precariously, tilting under the weight of dread. Waves crash against the hull, roaring like wild animals eager for their prey. "Get the women and children first," Captain Chaumet shouts, desperation cracking his voice. His eyes dart around, searching for any semblance of order in the chaos. Men scramble, heartbeats quickening as the ship groans beneath their feet. Only 15 lifeboats are ready. 15. The wooden vessels bob beside the ship like little corks yearning to set off. But the swell is treacherous. Every passing moment sees the Medusa sink deeper into the unforgiving sea. "Stay calm," a crew member yells, voice straining above the tumult. But calm is a distant memory now. The clamour is a sharp mix of cries and curses. The smell of sweat and fear is almost suffocating. One man, Pierre, fights to control his breath as he grips the rail, knuckles white. He can almost taste the salt on his cracked lips. "We won't all fit. We need to leave. Now!" Panic claws at his throat. The last command echoes through the air. Time slows, but the minutes drip away like melting ice. He glances at his sister, Isabel, who stands clutching her little boy. Her eyes, wide with terror, reflect the chaos around them. What will happen if there aren't enough boats? "Pierre," she cries, her voice cracking, "we can't leave without each other." Their hands reach out, fingertips almost brushing, but another man brushes past, a stranger to them, lunging for a lifeboat. The boat sways ominously. With the roar of the ocean now a wicked symphony, panic spreads like wildfire. "Make way," shouts a burly sailor. He's pushing past anyone in his path, desperation transforming him into a brute. The heat of bodies melds with the chill of the sea spray. Isabel stumbles back as the sailor shoves her aside, disregarding her as if she is nothing. "This is madness," she yells. Her voice barely registers above the cacophony of fear. Someone is shouting for more ropes, another for the captain, but it feels as though they are all lost in a tempest of confusion. A lifeboat splashes into the water, men tumbling in, arms thrashing as they scramble for safety. Their urgency breeds violence. One man, dressed in tattered clothes, makes a final desperate leap. His foot slips, and he plunges overboard instead. A wet thud, followed by a terrifying silence. "Help!" he screams, flailing amid the swollen waves. The lifeboat drifts away, its occupants too frightened to turn back. Laughter mingles with cries, a cruel mockery of their predicament. "Just hold on," Pierre shouts, but his voice barely gets through. The heart-wrenching sound of the man's fading cries hangs in the air. Chaos spirals, like a storm brewing within each desperate soul. Some officials are shouting orders, but no one listens. The air is electric, charged with resignation and denial. They all know the truth. They are drowning in their own panic. "Grab a rope. We need to pull him up." But as they attempt to lend aid, the frantic cries become muffled, swallowed by the sea. "I can't watch this," Isabel whispers, clenching her fists. Her nails dig into her palms, blood rising against her skin. The first lifeboat is filled, shouting echoes as men jostle for a place. Pierre feels a tug behind him, someone pulling on his coat. "Get in! Now!" The voice is harsh, brookering no argument. But what about Isabel? He looks back. There's no time, no time. "Pierre!" she screams. The lifeboat sways again, but it's full. He weighs his sister's life against his own. "Please!" Her plea wraps around him. There's a darkness pooling in his chest, and he knows he must choose. "Isabel, get to the next one." He pushes himself forward, his heart cracking under the need to survive. He glances back one last time, meeting her desperate gaze. "Promise me." "I promise." The words slip out, a thread of hope woven through their despair. But does he even believe it? Water sprays against his face as he steps onto the lifeboat, feeling the wood wobble beneath his weight. The crew member shoves them along, frantic hands pushing them into place. The ship groans, a lamenting sound as it seems to shudder with finality. Isabel stands at the edge, an island of drifting fear as the lifeboat pulls away. Her tears reflect the starlit night that seems to mock them. There's an ache in Pierre's heart, but survival pulls him like a tide. "Get ready," shouts a sailor, and beneath him, the lifeboat slips further from the Medusa. It feels like leaving home, like a betrayal, like a horror that words cannot grasp. The moon hangs overhead, mocking them with its pale glow. The vastness of the sea stretches endlessly, and the cold winds whip around them, biting at exposed skin. "Look!" someone cries, pointing back at the ship. Panic rises as they witness lifeboats, capsizing, chaos unfurling, a shadowy dance of terror. The Medusa seems to scream, the creaking of her bones echoing like a ghostly lament. "Hold on." The shout breaks through, but it's too late. One lifeboat, overloaded with soldiers, tips over, bodies crashing into the abyss below. Pierre watches as limbs thrash in the dark water, a macabre ballet of desperation. The sea seems to swallow them whole, a predator feasting on those forgotten. There's nothing they can do. Nothing. They can only stare at the chaos unraveling before their eyes, the souls lost to the dark, the waves claiming more than just lives. Grief invades the air, thick and choking. "Are we next?" a voice whispers beside him. A man, ragged and pale, turns to Pierre with wild eyes. Desolation is written on his face. The wind howls, pulling them into its icy grasp. The lifeboat bobs uncertainly on the rolling sea, teetering close to the edge of despair. Pierre swallows hard, the salt mingling with the burn of tears. What bears weight is the silence and the screeching of hope. As another lifeboat is launched, they hear the shouts growing distant, fading alongside the last moments of lives left behind. Will there be enough? Will anyone return? In that frozen moment, with despair cascading around them, a chilling thought cuts through the numbness. They left people behind, friends, families, loved ones. Isabel. The icy grasp of the ocean pulls at thoughts like a lingering shadow as he steers the lifeboat away from the wreckage, the cries fading into ghostly echoes. In the heart of the storm, the weight of survival feels heavier than death. How could they have known they would be marooned, destined for a fight against time itself? In the dark stillness, the waves whisper a terrible secret. Some would never see land again. As the wind howls, a single question lingers in the air, unanswered. Who would survive, and whom would they leave behind? Chapter 3. Crafting. Survival. The makeshift raft. Panic hangs in the air, heavy and cloying. The sunlight beams down, relentless and unyielding. Sweltering heat radiates from the sand, the scent of salt mingling with the acrid smell of desperation. Surrounded by chaos, the survivors know the fragile lifeboats will never hold them all. Enveloped in grief and fear, they realize their only hope lies in a makeshift raft. Sweaty hands grip wooden planks as voices clash above the thrumming surf. "We're out of time," a voice shouts. "We must act now." The waves crash behind them, a constant reminder of the peril at their backs. Some turn toward the shore, calling for the remaining crew. Others face the open sea, grasping at the uncertain future. Two men, Marie and Antoine, scour the remnants of their ship, How much do you think it can hold? Marie asks, his voice low, almost lost among the uproar. Antoine examines the battered remains, cringing at the splintered wood. I can't say, but it has to hold us. They select beams, twisting, turning, and wedging them together. Each wooden piece tells a story of the ship, of lives spent at sea. With each knock, the memory echoes, a cry for help, laughter, the crack of cannons. The weight of it all sits on Marie's shoulders. He glances at the water, despair and longing pooling in his chest. A group gathers around, exhausted and burnt. Faces glisten with sweat, dirt smeared across cheeks like war paint. Silhouettes of hopelessness. The sun dips lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows that shiver in the wind. Their voices blend into a low hum, an anxiety-laden mantra. This way, we need to support the middle. A sharp directive breaks through the murmur. Marie's voice dampens, his uncertainty creeping back in. Are you sure? What if it capsizes? It won't. Antoine's tone is resolute. It can't. We'll die otherwise. The urgency in the air sharpens like broken glass. As the raft begins to take form, their hands tremble with the weight of their decision. Each lashing of rope feels like a promise, tying not just wood together, but lives intertwined in desperation. There is no room for doubt. Onlookers stare, eyes sunken into their bones, reflecting the shadows of their fears. A woman, her hair matted and wild, clutches the arm of a boy. You'll be all right, won't you, Paul? She whispers, trembling. Paul does not respond. His eyes linger on the unfinished raft, haunted by the uncertainty of survival. The sound of the sea grows louder, almost a growl. Marie wipes his brow, salt mingling with sweat. He glances at the lifeboats nearly full. Only a few spots remain. They'll leave us, he mutters, dread threading through his tone. Not if we're ready, Antoine insists. His hands work furiously, knuckles white around the ropes. Each twist and turn builds not only the raft, but also their hope, fragile and wavering. The sun slides below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. A chill edges the air now. Night is creeping in. Shadows stretch across the sand, dragging their fears into the growing darkness. Where will we go? Someone asks, a quaver in their voice. What if we're lost again? Marie straightens, resolve strengthening his stance. We will follow the current. It will carry us. But in his heart, doubt stirs. The open sea is unforgiving, and the stars above shine indifferently, oblivious to their plight. With the last of their strength, they hoist the raft to the water's edge. Wood creaks, and the tide laps greedily at the base, the smell of the sea mixed with salt and decay. This is it, Antoine says, breathing heavily. This is how we live. As they push the raft into the foamy embrace of the ocean, the splashes echo like frantic heartbeats. They clamber aboard, bodies jostling, the raft swaying dangerously. Each face is etched with fear and anticipation, standing on the precipice of survival. Will you be all right? The woman asks her son, and for the first time, Paul nods, eyes wide and fearful. But just as they begin to settle, a sudden crack resounds through the night, a splintering wood. Marie rushes towards the sound, heart racing. What was that? He demands, panic rising in his throat. Antoine stares, wide-eyed. Something's wrong. The raft trembles beneath them, an ominous warning. Something shifts in the water, dark and foreboding. It comes closer, and the survivors instinctively grasp at anything they can. Ho! Over here, a voice calls from the lifeboats, but Marie shakes his head. It's too late. Their choice is made. The sea welcomes them. Behind them, the horizon darkens, storm clouds gathering like a great beast stalking its prey. The wind picks up, shrieking through the sparse rigging left on the remnants of the Medusa. Faces turn to the sky, the first drops of rain hitting their skin like icy needles. They brace against the looming tempest. Survival, now a mere glimmer through the chaos. Hold on, Antoine shouts as the raft rises and falls, a precarious dance on the waves. Marie's heart pounds, a chaotic rhythm of fear and determination. The raft feels alive, a creature forged from wood and will. holding tight against the unforgiving sea. "We have to push forward," he urges, knowing every second counts. But as the shadows shift and the storm unleashes its fury upon the fragile craft, another sound pierces the night, a desperate scream from one of the lifeboats, cut short by the crash of a monstrous wave. With the storm raging, the first cracks of despair seep into the hearts of the survivors. They cling to their makeshift raft, fighting against an enemy they cannot see. The darkness swallows them, as the sea roars with unfathomable rage. What comes next? Will the raft withstand the tempest, or will it crumble beneath the weight of their haunting? Choices. The answers lie just beyond the horizon, waiting to claim their survivors. Chapter 4. Abandonment at Sea, Stricken by Nature. They are adrift, floating on a makeshift raft made of rotting wood and hollow dreams. The ocean stretches in every direction, an endless blue, deceptive and still. Above them, the sun blazes like a molten coin, its heat relentless. It scorches their skin, turning salt into tiny crystals that cling painfully to open wounds. "Can you feel it?" one man gasps, his voice hoarse, cracked. "It's like the sun's trying to burn us alive." The others nod slowly, their faces gaunt, parched. They stare out at the horizon, where the sky meets the sea, where hope once lived. Now it feels like a cruel joke. A slight breeze brushes against their skin, and it brings no relief. Instead it carries the scent of despair, a mix of sweat, blood, and the bitter tang of fear. Each hour stretches into a small eternity. The taste of salt lingers on their lips, bitter and dry. A man named Jean tries to gauge the passage of time by the position of the sun, but it becomes futile. How many days have they been out here? 3? 4? "Francois," he calls, voice cracking. "Do you have any more water?" Francois holds up an empty flask, the metal glinting in the sun like a sick joke. "It's gone. We drank it all," he replies, a hollow sound echoing between them. There's no denial anymore. They are here, just floating, waiting for a miracle that won't come. The raft rocks with the rhythm of languid waves, but there's no comfort, only the erratic sounds of restless men. One man, his younger face already a mask of terror, stares at the water with wide eyes. What if we don't get rescued?" The words tumble out, a raw confession. Disbelief hangs thick in the air. They look at each other, not out loud, but with shared understanding. They all feel it, the gnawing fear that surrounds them, tighter than the ropes holding the raft together. At night, the stars gleam above them, merciless and indifferent. Jean tries to remember the constellations he once learned. They were a comfort in the dark, but here they feel cold and unreachable. "Look," he whispers, gesturing to a shimmering light far in the distance. "Maybe it's a ship." Francois squints, hope igniting in his chest. But seconds stretch. The light winks out, swallowed by the endless black. "Or it's nothing," he says, shoulders slumping. The weight of those words hangs heavier than the darkness around them. Days blend into one another. The sun rises and falls with an all-seeing eye. Still, they float. Sometimes, the desire to scream takes over, to let the ocean swallow their despair. There is violence in the quiet, an undercurrent of emotions repressed. Men begin to argue over the tiny rations they salvaged. A single biscuit, half-eaten, is thrust back and forth like a relic of hope and desperation. "Give me that!" One man lunges forward, grabbing the biscuit from another, crumbling it in his trembling fingers. It stings like betrayal. The others look on in disbelief. "You're mad," says another voice low. "We're all starving." He could almost hear a punch clicking into place, a moment before everything shatters. Instead, there's a silence that stretches taut, crackling with tension. The sense of community, fragile and thin, begins to fray as quickly as the strips of canvas on which they once found shelter. As daylight fades, the ocean turns indigo. Shadows creep forward, pooling around their feet. They huddle together for warmth, the salty air chilling as night falls. With only the sound of water lapping against their raft, They struggle not to think about the creatures lurking below the surface. Murmurs of fear ripple amongst them. "Do you think they can smell us?" one questions quietly, shivering against the coldness that seeps into his bones. "Shut your mouth," another snaps. "What good is thinking about that now?" But it's too late. The enemy has infiltrated their minds, digging deep with each passing hour. Every splash now feels sinister. Every rippling wave threatens to swallow them whole. For those first days, hope flickers in odd moments. Though it is fragile, it exists. They reminisce about home, sharing half-remembered stories of gardens and laughter. But usually, it ends in silence, as the truth sets in. Their world is now reduced to the expanse of water, skies unyielding, and isolation that binds them tighter than any rope. The growing shadows of despair are punctuated by hunger. Their stomachs contract painfully. Gnawing pangs echo louder than any wave. They gather what small scraps remain, endlessly rationing them like precious gems. "Did you hear that?" Jean whispers one night, his heart racing. "What?" Francois replies cautiously, eyes wide. The sounds of night envelop them, the distant calls of seabirds sketching shapes above. But there's something beneath it, a churning noise. Men shift anxiously on the raft, unease threading through their group like a needle through fabric. "Just the ocean," one reassures, but his voice lacks conviction. The fear lurks beneath the surface, wavering, but never receded. The fourth night settles in thick and heavy, each breath an effort. The cry of a single gull pierces the darkness, the sole harbinger of their presence in this vast desolation. Jean grips wooden planks beneath him, the roughness of splintered edges pressing into his palms. The darkness feels heavy, oppressive, a weight that crushes down. It's not just the lack of food or water, it's the claustrophobia of the open sea. In this vast expanse of nothing, they are reduced to mere shadows. Then, suddenly, there's a crack, sharp, immediate. Eyes widen in fear as they turn to each other. "What was that?" whispers Francois, breath hitching. A chill runs through the group. It's a sound too manic for imagination. They strain to listen, hearts racing as the sound reverberates through the stillness. Then, a feeling of dread thickens the air. Something is coming. As the waters begin to roil beneath them, the raft bobs violently, tossing them to one side. Panic ignites, voices rising in chaos. In a moment, it becomes clear. They are no longer alone. And in that moment, when hope falters and despair rises, they realize they must confront not just the furious elements of nature, but the darkness that has taken root in their souls. "Look," someone shouts, pointing wildly. But what they see remains a mystery. Darkness converging, and then silence falls. What lurks beneath the waves? And who among them will falter under the strain of their situation? As uncertainty swells, the fight for survival reaches an unbearable peak. The raft shakes, and the whisper of something terrible stirs below. What fate awaits them on this endless sea? Chapter 5. Descent into Despair, Starvation and Dehydration. The July sun beats down relentlessly, a white-hot ember burning across the vast expanse of ocean. Each day blends into the next, a blurry haze of sweat-soaked skin and parched lips. The raft rocks gently, yet there's no comfort in its motion. Instead, it mocks the group huddled within its fragile confines. Their stomachs are hollow caverns, echoing with the relentless groan of hunger. Days stretch into infinity, a punishment that gnaws at both flesh and spirit. No one speaks much anymore. Words feel futile, like crushed dreams underfoot. They share glances, heavy with an unspoken truth. Hunger is poisoning their minds. It's eating away at their shared humanity. Henri, a sturdy man with a sunburnt neck, stares into the abyss of salt water. "They'll find us soon," he says, though there's a tremor in his voice. That's when Pierre scoffs. "Soon? It's been weeks, Henri. We're just drifting in this cursed expanse." Pierre's eyes dart toward the horizon, desperation creeping into his tone. The salty breeze carries a hint of decay. A fish, once alive and gleaming, now lies forgotten on the raft's edge. Its scales shimmer weakly, but the smell is unmistakable, a scent of impending rot. They could have eaten it, but fear of sickness has paralyzed their instincts. Each man fights his own personal demon. Antoine, only 30, but aged as if he'd seen a lifetime of grief, runs his fingers over his ribcage. His skin, tight and raw, reminds him that time is not a luxury. It's a sentence. Every fibre of his being screams for sustenance. "Let's fish," he suggests, hoarse and barely above a whisper. Pierre shakes his head as if the suggestion is blasphemous. A man behind them snaps, "There's nothing to catch anymore. We've drained the ocean dry with our hopes." The despair weighs heavy, pressing against the fragile morale like a sinking anchor. Silence returns, thick and suffocating. Fatigue drips into their bones, and reality manifests in cruel forms, interminable thirst and gnawing hunger. Some keep to themselves. Others stare blankly at the rolling waves, hoping for rescue that feels increasingly out of reach. Night brings a brief respite from the heat, but it heralds another peril, the chilling air creeping into every crevice. The cold eats at them like an invader. Their lips crack and bleed, a painful reminder that even water is a precious commodity. "Do you hear that?" Henri's voice pierces the quiet. It's uncertain but desperate. The waves, they're calling. Pierre narrows his eyes, wary of delusions. "They call you to drown, you mean?" His tone bears the edge of madness, reflective of their fragile sanity. Antoine shakes his head. "We can't let despair take us. We must stay strong." But even he knows strength is wearing thin. The stars emerge, twinkling like shards of glass in the velvet sky, yet their beauty offers no comfort. Staring up at them, Antoine imagines what his family is doing back home. Do they wonder? Do they grieve? Then a figure shifts beside him, half faded in the darkness. "Are you okay, Antoine?" The voice drips with concern. "I'm fine, just thinking," he replies, but the truth is a knife twisting in his gut. Thinking is a luxury. Each thought about food, about what used to be, stabs deeper into his already raw psyche. Thoughts drift between madness and fleeting memories. They remember feasts shared, the sound of laughter echoing across tables laden with food, but such joy feels distant as their bodies begin to writhe. "I keep seeing visions of fruit," Henri mutters, a delirious glimmer in his eye. "Fresh, sweet. It hangs from the trees, and I can taste it." Pierre groans, grasping his stomach. "Stop it. Just stop it." The air grows thick with tension. Desperation begins to manifest, not just in their words, but in their actions. They are no longer men. They are shadows of themselves, bartering humanity for survival. Weeks crawl by, blending horror and hope. They ration what little provisions they have left. Snaps of bread turn staler than their celebration. One soldier suggests chewing on his leather boot for sustenance, laughter dancing nervously around the raft. They all hope it's a joke, but deep down, fantasy and reality converge. Then, fate turns grim. At dawn on the 21st day, a blood-curdling scream slices through the morning fog. A man, mad from thirst, has taken the plunge. Raoul, a family man with humour in his heart, now spirals toward the depths. "Raoul, no!" screams Antoine, his heart racing. But it is too late. The ocean swallows him whole. Panic erupts. Waves crash violently against the raft as the remaining men scramble to grab hold of their sanity. Pierre clings to the edge, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. We can't let despair win, but how? The silence that follows Raoul's disappearance is a chasm, each man wrestling with his own thoughts, each man facing his darkest restlessness. Days continue in excruciating monotony, each sunrise illuminating gaunt faces and eyes that once held dreams of exploration. Now they shine with desperation, a flickering flame in the desert night. The echoes of lost comrades haunt their minds. Antoine thinks he sees Raoul's face in the water, pleading, mocking, slipping away. "How do we survive?" he asks, the question reverberating against the backdrop of waves. "We pray." Henry's voice is hollow. Each man stares at the horizon, searching for a ship divine or a miracle. Soon, those fragile bonds begin to fray. The lifeline of cordiality snaps. "He deserves it," Pierre shouts, pointing at the leftovers of the caught fish. They all know it's whispers of madness, one food source, with hunger gnawing through every good intention. Darkness takes root. The air becomes thick with the smell of fear and sweat, an unbearable mix. The tension teeters on a knife's edge. They are more than hungry, they are nearly feral. One fateful night, Antoine drags his fingers through the sea, searching for the last remaining remnants of hope. "I can't give up." But even as he says it, an ominous whisper curls around his heart. The ocean, a cruel mistress, offers no answers, only an endless cycle of despair. The raft creaks ominously, a reluctant witness to their suffering. Each turn of the tide seems to echo their plight, every ripple a reminder of their fragile existence. As the sun dips below the horizon, rain begins to fall, heavy and unrelenting. It pours down upon them, a taunting deliverer. The sky weeps for them, but they cannot catch the droplets. "Drink, drink it," flashes through their minds. But hope is a meager sustenance against the gnawing hunger gripping their guts. Then, in the claustrophobic darkness, as shadows stretch unnoticed, Antoine notices something lurking just beneath the surface. He squints, his heart racing. What is that? The glimmer of something appealing. A shape moves, and for one breathless moment, hope flares. It flickers and fades as quickly as it appeared. Those questions hang in the air like the storm yet to come. "We can't wait any longer," he whispers, uncertainty threading his tone. Is that salvation, or just another cruel twist of fate? As the rain pours down, it becomes hard to see through the tears of despair in their eyes. Each man grapples with his own demons, and the darkness feels closer than ever. What desperate actions will they take in the face of their despair? The ocean waits, unfeeling and ominous, ready to swallow what little remains of their humanity. Chapter 6. The Unthinkable. Cannibalism on the Raft. The sun hangs low over the horizon, the sky streaked with crimson and ash. A persistent breeze carries an acrid scent of decay as bodies lay still on the raft, swaddled in a shroud of desperation. The castaways, once fellow passengers filled with hope, now gaze into the abyss of hunger and madness. Their thin faces are gaunt, eyes hollow and sunken. "Can you smell it?" whispers Francois, his voice hoarse and shaky. "We're running out of time." He glances nervously at the lifeless form of a man nearby. The temperature drops sharply as night descends. A chill seeps into their bones, gnawing at the pit of their stomachs. The raft, already a prison, feels smaller and heavier as the days drag on. Each sunrise brings only bitter reminders of their plight. Supplies dwindling, spirits plummeting. Hunger gnaws at their insides like a feral beast. Joan looks at the others, swallowing hard. "What are we going to do?" she asks, half hope, half defeat. There's no answer, only an unbearable silence thick enough to choke on. The sound of water lapping at the sides of the raft seems deafening in the quiet. Then a murmured discussion erupts among the men. They huddle, heads close together, voices barely above a whisper. Each word carries a weight that no outsider could ever comprehend. Ideas are proposed, fears articulated, and a singular truth emerges. Survival has a price. "Is it madness to speak it, then?" Jacques says, his face pale, haunted by an unnameable dread. "We could." His voice falters, but they all understand. To consume the dead, to take life from death. "I'd rather die than sink to that," mutters Paul, clutching his stomach, teeth clenched against the gnawing ache. But the others are silent, eyes darting toward the bodies. Among them, the name of the latest deceased echoes, Francois. The silence stretches like a taut string. It is in this moment, among the rotting corpses and the whispers of despair, that new resolve begins to take root. The first act of cannibalism on the raft is not born from savagery, but desperation. It isn't a single decision, but a collective surrender. The breathless tension shrouds them as they gather around, the flames of a distant fire flickering to life inside them. They cradle their horror like a secret, unsure if they will be consumed by it. Night falls with an oppressive weight. The cold washes over them, biting at exposed skin. They prepare, hands trembling, not from the cold, but from anticipation. The first cut is rough, tearing flesh with a sound that echoes in the soft, still air. Blood mingles with seawater, pooling and reflecting the stars. "Forgive me," whispers Francois, voice cracking as he reaches for a piece of flesh. It has to be done. Survival demands it. Each shudders under the enormity of their choice, the visceral awareness of what they are becoming. Lightning flashes in the sky for a brief moment, a reminder of nature's indifference. As storm clouds gather, so too does a spectral darkness within them. The taste of warmth, coppery and sharp, fills their mouths, and with each bite they devour a piece of their own humanity. "It's not so bad," says Paul, denying the truth with every word. Their laughter trickles into the night, a sound both haunting and hollow. The veneer of civilization peels away. Each night becomes a grotesque ritual. They gather around the fading heat of their bonfire, bones cracked and scraped clean. The smell of smoke mingles with the salty air, creating a sickly sweet aroma that wraps around them like a shroud. Tension coiled tight. They sit shoulder to shoulder, body heat rising even as their morals sink lower. "It's not the first time it's happened," one croaks, trying to find solace in the history of survival. "In times of need, we humans do what we must." But no one finds comfort, only an acceptance that is chilling in its finality. Days bleed into one another. Each morning greeted with a grim reminder of the choices made under the cover of darkness. Faces grow harder, the grief twisted into a sort of bitterness. They exchange guilty glances, whispers trailing off as the thought lingers like smoke. The next body will be one of their own. "I can't do this anymore," murmurs Joan one night, trembling as the weight of despair wraps around her. "We're not just survivors, we're monsters." It echoes into the void, unanswered, but the hunger claws at their insides, relentless and insatiable. It whispers to them in shadows, taking root in nightmares. And though their minds rebel against the actions, the body is a creature of instinct. As the darkness looms, Jacques stares into the water. The reflection of their own faces, twisted, monstrous, stares back. "We're nothing but ghosts now," he says softly, the hint of madness threading his words. "Just shadows of who we used to be." The storm begins to gather overhead, a rumble of thunder interspersed with the splashing of their frail raft against the rising waves. They brace themselves, knowing a tempest is coming, inside and out. The salty spray stings their raw skin, chilling them to the core. Moments drag heavy in the air, leading them to an uneasy pact. One of the men, a desperate voice in the chaos, suggests a game, a vote. "Who's next?" he challenges, the carnality creeping in. "Enough," Paul snaps, anger flaring. "This is no game." But others murmur slightly, wrestling with their own hunger. A chilling laugh escapes Francois's lips, sharp and piercing like a blade. "We're all next. We just don't know it yet." The sky crackles with electricity. Tension surges, electric and palpable, as they edge closer to either salvation or ruin. It hangs thick in the air, that unthinkable dread. As the storm descends, they huddle closely, their fates intertwined, staring into the abyss together. Each heart thumps with the echo of a choice that cannot be undone, and in this grim theatre of survival, it becomes painfully clear the darkness is not just out there, they carry it inside. Who will be the first to raise their hand? The chilling question hangs, unanswered, in the air as the storm erupts. The darkness within them grows, clawing at the edges of sanity, igniting the dread of what lies ahead. The wind howls, and the raft shakes violently as thunder rolls overhead. In that tumultuous moment, they realize the unthinkable may be their only chance of life. As the waves crash against their makeshift sanctuary, they stand on the precipice of humanity, waiting for a single answer that could seal their fate. Chapter 7. Betrayal. Division among survivors. The sun hangs low, casting a sickly orange hue across the expanse of the ocean. The raft, battered and worn, floats aimlessly, a fragile speck on the endless blue. Each day bleeds into the next, and despair festers like an untreated wound. Water, once a source of life, now fuels arguments. The rationing of meager supplies becomes a battleground. Voices rise. In pitch, emotions crackling like dry kindling. 2 sips a day is unfathomable, Pierre shouts, the salt spray stinging his eyes. His skin glistens, moist with perspiration in the unbearable heat, but it's not just the sun that makes him sweat. It's the danger simmering beneath the surface. Speak for yourself, Laurent mutters, his face taut and sunburned. He grasps a half-empty water skin, the leather cracked and worn. I've seen men die over less. The tension hangs heavily, thickening the air around them. At night, the cold seeps in, wrapping around their bodies like a suffocating shroud. The wounds on their feet become infected, pus mingling with the salt from the seawater. They begin to rot. Quieter men like Camille, often overlooked, speak softly among themselves. We must do what we can to survive, he whispers, if that means taking what we need. Betrayal looms, an intangible shadow lurking close by. Everyone feels it, though no one speaks of it openly. A flicker of doubt plays in each gaze. Friends once bound by the hope of rescue now view each other through narrowed eyes, calculating. Keep your hands to yourself, a voice bellows as a scuffle breaks out. It's Jun, a broad-shouldered man with knuckles like iron. The fight is over a single fish, caught in a desperate scramble. The creature thrashes, scales glistening in the fading light, as fingers claw at jagged paper-thin fins. A bloodied lip and thumping heart echo on the wind. Enough of this, shouts a voice almost trembling with authority. Captain Dumont, his uniform barely recognizable under grime and desperation, tries to restore order. We must maintain our humanity. But the weight of his words feels hollow. His voice is a whisper against the gale. Beneath the surface, alliances shift like undercurrents. Marie, the youngest among them, keeps to herself, scavenging what she can find. Her small hands wrap around bits of driftwood and scraps, of fabric from distant wrecks. Every piece feels like a treasure, but the others watch her movements with suspicion. You're hoarding supplies, a man accuses, his face gaunt, clearly undernourished. If you're not with us, you're against us. The words hang for an instant, a sharp blade cutting deeper than the hunger gnawing at their bellies. Marie stares back, eyes wide, fearful but resolute. She clings to her treasures, each item a connection to the world they've lost. One night, the arguments boil over. A crude assembly forms on the raft. Shadows dance ominously under the dim light of the moon. We need to decide who stays and who goes, a voice, heavy with bitterness, declares. Eyes dart back and forth, fear lacing the air with a tangible tension. What do you mean? A woman asks, incredulity mixed with unease. There's not enough for all of us. We're doomed unless we make a choice. The group sharpens, differentiating like predators ready to pounce at the slightest provocation. It's a moment balanced on the edge of a knife. The men exchange glances, alliances all but formed in whispers, unspoken promises hanging suspended above the churning water. You can't mean to cast anyone off, Marie pleads, her voice trembling. We must stand together. Together. Look around you, Laurent sneers, gaze sweeping over the worn bodies, hollowed faces. Together leads to death. This is survival. His words hang ominously, striking a chord of primal instinct. They resonate deeply, twisting gut feelings into sharp blades of self-preservation. As the night stretches into the early hours, body warmth slips away. Exhaled breaths are hoarse. Each desperate inhale leaves a bitter taste. Scattered across the raft, survivors huddle closer to cracks of splintered wood, yet they inch apart as well, invisible barriers formed from fear and mistrust. In whispered corners, conversations grow darker. A small group begins to plot, eyes glinting with a mixture of hunger and ambition. Marie overhears snippets, dread crawling up her spine. One more to feed. It's for the best, a voice proposes, cold as the encroaching chill. Enough, Captain Dumont breaks in, voice steady yet laced with tension, rigid in the face of overwhelming disarray. We will not descend into savagery. Yet straying whispers weave through the restless night, framing twisted scenarios of betrayal. If you stand with them, you'll find only despair, someone says. Trust no one. By day, they tighten their ranks, guarding each morsel, each secret. Rations grow thinner, and soon, stealing takes on a new meaning. With every fish uncaught, a piece of their humanity slips further away. Grains of rice are scrutinized, counted, divided with meticulous care. They all know that any slip could mean death. The sun sets once again, painting the horizon in violent shades. Anguish sharpens the air, and cold, hard, choices beckon like a siren call. There's a distinct shift, an awareness that some might not see the dawn. Suddenly a scream pierces the murmurings. It's Marie, standing tall against the weight of desperation and fear. "You've gone too far," she cries, defiance surging through her. "You'll tear us apart for scraps." "Stand down," a heavy voice orders, but her spirit refuses to dim. The faint glimmer of hope flickers in the depths of despair. And just like that, the fabric of their community shatters. The air stills, suffocated by unspoken decisions. As whispers of betrayal echo across the raft, the sound of a sharp blade unsheathing fills the silence. Someone has crossed the line, and the darkness draws closer. In the throes of survival, fractures deepen and humanity starts to erode. But one question looms larger than the others. When the dawn breaks, who will be left standing? Chapter 8. Rescue or Ruin, the Sight of Land. Salt stings the lips. The survivors huddle together, bodies trembling from cold and exhaustion. 13 days adrift in a fragile raft, scattered fragments of the Medusa. Their stomachs churn empty. They hear the haunting lapping of waves, a cruel mockery of the hope that flickers in the distance. A voice rises, trembling but sharp. "Look, over there." All eyes turn. At first it's a mere mirage, a line on the horizon. Yet, with growing clarity, they see it, the outline of land, green and lush against the endless blue. It could be salvation. "Is it real?" a young man whispers, clutching his brother's arm. "No trick of the sea, I swear it." The older brother tightens his grip, as disbelief dances in his eyes. "It's land. We're not lost." But doubt lingers, thick as the stench of sweat and rot that surrounds them. They've seen too many dreams dashed, too many bodies slip beneath the waves. With land, possibility breathes again, but so does danger. The sun hangs low, casting an orange glow over the water, wrapping them in a deceptive warmth. They can almost taste the ripe fruits. Imagine the soft soil beneath their feet. Yet, as the raft drifts closer, apprehension creeps in. What if it's a trap? The voice of an older man, seasoned and weary, draws them back to reality. A bait to lure us to doom. They weigh his words. Each man feels the tightening knot in his stomach. The thought of pitfalls, of new horrors, is almost unbearable. The endless sea has coaxed promises from them, only to drown them in despair. "Do we dare?" mutters a thin figure, hardly more than a wisp. "Do we risk it?" The air between them thickens. Some nod, their eyes glistening with longing. Others stare blankly, fear gripping their hearts like a vice. As they near the shores, the scent of land wafts toward them, a blend of damp earth and vegetation, promising life but tainted with uncertainty. With every stroke of the oar, hope and dread battle for dominance. The survivors cannot shake the image of the shipwreck. Memories flood back. A gusting wind, the crack of the hull breaking apart. The cries of men echoing in panic. A snap of a branch breaks their reverie. Do you hear that? A voice, barely above a whisper. The forest looms ahead, dark and tangled. What lurks behind those trees? What waits before their feet touch solid ground? The waves shift, dragging them closer to an overgrown inlet. Clusters of scrub brush reveal themselves. Moss clings to rocks like the hands of lost souls grasping at salvation. Pull harder, commands a weary voice, urgency flaring in the air. We need to reach it. They paddle frantically. The taste of bitter seawater fills their mouths. Each stroke feels heavier. Each breath counts. Will it be the last taste of salt or the first breath of freedom? As the raft scrapes against the sand, a growling hunger gnaws at their insides. Hope turns to greed. They jump from the dripping. Planks, feet sinking into the soft earth, shells crunching underfoot. A shout erupts, strangled, panicked. The jungle. It could be hiding danger, but something deeper pulses within them, curiosity, desperation. Stay close, hisses one man, his eyes scanning the dense foliage. Let's not lose each other yet. They step forward, breathless, emerging from the lush undergrowth, a rich tapestry of greens, bright flowers, and shadows. Every rustle sends a wave of anxiety through the group. What wonders await, and what terrors. The air is thick here. Mosquitoes buzz angrily. The sun filters through the canopy, casting ethereal patterns on the ground. What if they see us? A voice trembles with the weight of the unknown. What if there are people? What kind? The hearts of the men race. Uncertainty clings to them like the humid air. Have they escaped the sea only to plunge into the hands of the unknown? Keep your wits about you, the seasoned. Man's voice cuts through the tension. Silence and caution. We need to scout first. They move as one, a procession of shadows threading through the underbrush. Leaves snap underfoot. Twigs break like bones. Each sound echoes with a sinister resonance. Shrubs part slightly, revealing a vista. The land rolls outward into hills. There are signs of life. Smoke. Buildings peeking just beyond the trees. Look! Another voice, this one tinged with disbelief. Humans! A knot tightens in their chests. Are these rescuers or adversaries? The allure of shelter struggles against the instinct to flee. What they see ignites flickers of laughter and relief, battled by the haunting memories of betrayal and bloodshed. Do we approach? Comes the question, heavy and loaded. The debate unfolds among them, bubbling with emotions. But then, another sound, low and rumbling, carrying through the trees. Laughter, the triumphant cries of festivity. Or a war cry, another, snaps, eyes darting in fear, painted with shadow. The sun fades, shadows stretch, and the world feels more sinister. Night creeps in, and with it, their dread returns. The realization weighs heavy, as if the very air conspired against them. We can't retreat now, someone insists, desperation coloring his tone. We've come too far. For a moment, the anxiety is palpable. The survivors lock eyes, a silent agreement hanging thick in the air. But soon, another voice, grim and resigned, interrupts. But we may not return at all. They step closer, the jungle closing in around them. Each heartbeat pounds in their ears, a steady reminder of both their humanity and their fragility. The world teeters, uncertain, somewhere between salvation and doom. As they cross into the clearing, hearts racing, they stop in their tracks. Ahead lies, what? Something familiar and foreign, wild and unnerving. Prepare yourselves, whispers the older man, for whatever comes. Next. The weight of his words hangs in the air like the sweet scent of flowers, mingling with the bitter realization. The spectre of hope hangs precariously in the balance. The trees rustle, and then they hear it, a voice, echoing through the dusk, drawing closer. Stop right there. They freeze, hearts jumping into throats. What awaits them on this uncertain shore? Rescue, ruin, or something much darker? Chapter 9. The Aftermath. Arrival and Revelation. The sun rises slowly over the French coast, casting a golden hue across the waves. Sailboats glide smoothly, indifferent to the horrors lurking just beyond the horizon. Here, at last, is land. After weeks adrift, the weary survivors of the raft make their way to the beach. Salt crusts their skin, and the smell of decomposition clings to them. Their laughter, once a desperate echo, has faded. Instead, it is replaced by the quiet murmur of disbelief. "Look, there's land," a voice calls weakly. But as they stagger onto the shore, their bodies shake with the aftershock of survival. Each step sinks into soft sand, where grains cling to bloodied feet. They are gaunt figures, shadows of their former selves, skin stretched tight over protruding bones. The first faces they see belong to fishermen. It's a warm day in late July, yet these men can't help but recoil. One asks cautiously, "What happened to you?" Words tumble out, incoherent at first, an avalanche of terror. They speak of storms, of cannibalism, of the cold nights when hope was just as frozen as their own flesh. The fishermen nod, giving a signal to others. Their disbelief carves deep lines into their brows. "Mon Dieu," whispers one, clutching his rosary as he stares. The survivors are ushered away from the beach, but they cannot forget. They carry the stench of their ordeal. The smell of desperation and decay still lingers on their clothes. It mingles with the sweet scent of the coastal air, creating a nauseating cocktail. As authorities arrive, their faces turn grave. There is no rush to understand, only a measured response that feels too clinical. Captain Jean-Charles, his uniform crisp against the backdrop of a sunlit day, scrutinizes the ragged group with a mix of intrigue and horror. Sensing the gravity of what he is witnessing, he says, "Take them to the infirmary." They stumble forward into a world that seems so absurdly normal. A child giggles somewhere nearby. An old woman sells pastries at a bustling stall. But all the survivors can do is choke on memories, their lips parched and cracked. "It was hell," a man mutters, his voice raw and hoarse. You wouldn't believe it." Late that evening, surrounded by the stark white walls of the infirmary, the survivors sit in silence. Nurses attend to their wounds, but the real pain runs deeper. Their glances dart between one another, shared whispers of what must remain unspoken hanging heavy in the air. The doctor, a man with tired eyes, sits with them. His voice is gentle, but it carries the weight of authority. "You must tell me everything. We need to know how to help you." One man speaks up, his voice quivering. "We lost so much. No one should have to go through that. We've seen things that'll haunt us." Each survivor takes turns relaying fragments of their tale. They speak of the raft, patched together by desperation. Each wave, that struck, threatens to swallow it whole. They describe the agonizing hunger, the gnawing pain that consumed them as days turned into weeks. At first, the doctor listens, making notes, but as the stories deepen, his face reflects the horror of it all. "It sounds like a nightmare," he murmurs, pale and almost trembling himself. "Not a nightmare," another man interjects. "The nightmare is real." Suddenly, a shrill scream echoes from the adjoining room. It jolts them, breaking the surface of their collective trauma. The doctor rushes away, leaving the survivors locked in a moment thick with dread. What could be worse than what they've already endured? As they wait, tension builds. Outside, the world continues, so unaware. A car drives by, its tires crunching on gravel. A child's laughter drifts through the open window, but inside, life has stopped for them. The door creaks open. A weary nurse enters, her eyes wide as if she's seen the ghost of every sailor, lost at sea. "We found a journal," she says breathlessly, "belonging to one of your crew." The survivors lean in, anticipation gripping them. "What does it say?" The nurse hesitates. "It's not good. It details everything. Someone has to take responsibility." With that, gravity shifts. The burden of their raw truth collides with the world beyond the walls. The survivors exchange looks filled with urgency and dread. "Responsibility," one whispers. "For what we did, what we became." Footsteps echo outside. The door flings open and a government official strides in, exuding authority. "Gentlemen," he announces, cutting through fragile tension, "your accounts will be vital to us. We need to understand the full extent of the misconduct aboard your ship." Their faces pall. The sun continues to set outside, casting elongated shadows, not just of the men in their hospital gowns, but of the decisions they made to survive. "You must know," one of the survivors begins, his voice trembling. "What we faced out there was—" But the official cuts him off, holding a hand up. "We will hear your story, but first we need corroboration from your journal." An uncomfortable silence stretches between them. The terrible secrets hidden in those pages, realities too grotesque to acknowledge, now hang like a guillotine's weight above their heads. As fear settles into their bones, one man finally speaks. "Whatever we wrote, whatever happened, it doesn't end here. Not now." The official narrows his eyes, sensing the weight of those words. "What do you mean?" The room hangs in the balance, their fates intertwined with a history they cannot change. Something dark is brewing just beyond the horizon. They know it, feel it deep in their marrow. "We will tell you," the man says slowly, glancing at the others for strength. "But first, you must understand this. The world will never be ready for what we reveal." Their breaths catch, the atmosphere charging with unspoken truths. Outside, the universe remains unbothered, a cruel juxtaposition of normalcy against unimaginable horror. Endless possibilities stretch before them, but each new revelation will bring its own chain of events. As they sit, surrounded by walls and whispers, the weight of their shared burden presses down. What lies ahead is not just survival, it is the reckoning of their very souls, and once unleashed, their stories may reshape history itself. What will they lose in the retelling? What will they become? Chapter 10, Legacy of the Méduse, a cautionary tale. The sun hangs low on the horizon, casting an orange glow over the desolate sea. Waves lap against the jagged remnants of the wreck, whispering secrets of despair. The Méduse isn't just a sunken ship, it's a haunting emblem of human folly and resilience. By now, the tendrils of a bitter memory curl through the minds of those who survived. Each recounting of the disaster magnifies the emotional weight. "They abandoned us," one survivor whispers, voice shaking, heart still pounding from that fateful day. Eyes glossing over with pain, he remembers. "They left us to drift like flotsam, lost to the tides." That sense of betrayal lingers, wrapping tight like a noose. The ship was supposed to carry them to safety, an illustrious voyage that turned into a savage fight for survival. For many, the sea had become a merciless adversary. The combination of salt water and sweat stings open wounds, while the searing sun burns down relentlessly. It's hard to fathom what those men faced as the days dragged on. Hunger gnawed at them, a constant and insatiable ache. For a few, desperation morphed into madness. "We're not here for long," one man grumbles, the edge of his voice ragged, eyes wild. "We will eat our own before this is over." Others stare into the distance, contemplating the horror of that idea. Hope flickers like a dying flame in a storm. Those left to salvage meaning from the wreck find pockets of comfort. They share stories, songs, laughter, though they all know, deep down, that laughter hides fear. "Today we still breathe," an older sailor remarks, his voice steady, but eyes reflecting the abyss. "Tomorrow, well, we'll see." But the sea offers no guarantees. Day by day, it strips away the remnants of civility. Bodies are lost to the deep, swallowed without ceremony or trace. The survivors cling to each other, forming bonds born from shared terror. They are castaways, friends and strangers united by brutal necessity. Each loss weighs heavier than the last. In the aftermath, as tales of survival spread across France, the legacy of the Méduse shifts. It becomes a cautionary parable, warning of the perils of neglect and arrogance. The aristocrats who ran the voyage are painted as inept leaders, drowning in their hubris. People clutch on to these stories like lifebuoys. Then come The debates. How could this happen? The voices are sharp, relentless, fueled by outrage. Newspaper pamphlets circulate, ink still damp, pages fluttering in the public consciousness. A tragedy of this scale must never repeat, they proclaim, rallying cries that echo through the streets. Maritime laws are scrutinized, dismantled. The very fabric of naval practices shifts like the sea, imbuing each sailor with a sense of foreboding. The catastrophe becomes a blueprint for reform. Each change is a step towards hope, yet it stirs an underlying fear. If this is what it takes to survive, then what are we losing in the process? As men debate safety protocols into the night, the shadows grow long. They discuss the moral responsibilities of those in power, as flickering candlelight dances over their faces. A sailor clenches his fists. It isn't just the ship's wreckage, it's us, our humanity on that raft. Survivors who make it ashore return as ghosts. They tell their stories in trembling voices, rekindling memories that refuse to rest. It wasn't just a loss of life, one survivor announces at a gathering, his voice trembling with intensity. It was a loss of self, a loss of what it means to be human. And yet, resilience breeds hope. Communities rise to honor the courage shown during despair. They build monuments not just to the dead, but to the living, celebrating their endurance. The tales transform into art. Painters capture the essence of survival on canvas, their brushes trembling under the weight of memory. These stories are resumed long into the night. Whispers of shadows flit through darkened taverns. Grief and gratitude intertwine as men raise their glasses to their fellow survivors. To the Méduse they toast, the spectre of the ship heavy upon their hearts. But beneath the camaraderie lies a deeper question that haunts them all. Was the strength they displayed a testament of courage, or merely survival instinct? Gone wild, the catastrophe of the Méduse leaves a lasting scar on the maritime world. Naval explorers become cautious, ever aware of the balance between ambition and safety. Still, some romanticize the adventure, convinced that peril adds flavor to life. Back at the docks, men clutch at fantasies, yearning for a taste of the heroism displayed on the swell of misfortune. And yet, beneath all the heroics, there is a haunting truth. History repeats itself when lessons are not learned. Memorable tales morph into cautionary tales. They become tethered to the legacy of the Méduse, slipping into the collective consciousness. The murmurs of never forget echo through the ages, a phrase both a warning and a plea. Suddenly the room falls silent, the intensity palpable. An elder sailor clears his throat, drawing every eye. We stood on that raft where men became beasts, he begins, voice low and gritty. What do we take from this? His question hangs in the air, heavy and pregnant with meaning. Survivors exchange glances, their stories intertwining in a tapestry of unresolved trauma. In this silence, one man rises, fists clenched. We need to hold those in power accountable. They took us from glory to ruin. And with every heartbeat, history writes itself anew. But will humanity heed the lessons of the past, or is darkness simply a part of our legacy?